Hey there, welcome to episode 154 of Mike's Collection. I'm Mike, and the part of my collection that I'm going to be talking about today is some Star Wars Black Series. Now, generally, I try to show you these figures pretty soon after I buy them, but Black Series is one of those collections that, I love Star Wars, but between movies, sometimes my interest tends to wane with Star Wars. I don't know why. It's not really the same with G.I. Joe or Marvel. I enjoy those all the time. And Star Wars, it's not like there's no media coming at me between movies. Like, I've enjoyed, the Mandalorian series. I'm looking forward to Boba Fett that's coming out soon. But I read the Marvel comics as well. So I've got a steady input of, good Star Wars material coming at me. But I tend to just get a little less excited about Star Wars figures than I do some of these other brands. So they often kind of get put by the wayside, and I get more excited to show you my new Marvel Legends or my new G.I. Joe classified figures. Anyway, so some of these figures I have had for quite a while, and I just really wanted to show them to you because I really want to wrap up everything that I bought in 2021 so I can start fresh with 2022 with all new toys. So without any further ado, why don't we take a look at my recent Star Wars Black Series purchases. Alright, so the first figure I'm going to talk about is the Mandalorian himself. So this is, I believe, the third version of the Mandalorian that Hasbro released in the Black Series. The first one was this guy here. And this guy I bought the day he came out. They called it like Star Wars Day or something. They released a bunch of figures. It was our first look at a lot of the characters that were going to be in the upcoming Mandalorian show, which hadn't even come out yet. So we didn't know anything about this guy. I got this figure. Now, mind you, he was available in a couple of different color boxes, but it was the same figure. And then I watched the first series of The Mandalorian, loved it, loved this figure. I think he looks great. His armor was very patchwork. Like you can see, it doesn't seem to match very well. It's not symmetrical as far as the shapes and the colors. It looked very thrown together, and that was accurate to the show. It's also quite dirty. But I assume you've probably watched both seasons of The Mandalorian if you're here watching a review of Star Wars figures. And as you'll know, so over the course of the season, he upgraded his armor so that it was all Beskar, which is a very strong armor, and then it was nice and shiny and silver. And so after that happened in the show, Hasbro released a second version of the Mandalorian in Beskar armor. Now, I did not get the Beskar armor version, although I intended to, but I was a little leery. When it comes to Black Series, I'm not a completist. My general rule is to just get cool looking robots and monsters. I really try not to buy a lot of the human characters, even characters I really love like Luke Skywalker and stuff. I just feel like I have so many Luke Skywalker characters I've in the 3 3/4 inch scale that I really wanted to keep my Black Series collection just cool looking stuff. Now, mind you, I break that rule all the time, but when it came to Mandalorian, as cool looking as he is, I already have Boba Fett, Jango Fett, and now they're making all kinds of Mandalorians like Bo-Katan and the heavy armor Mandalorian. Like, I've got like probably 5 or 6 guys that have this similar aesthetic. So when they announced the second version of the Mandalorian, I was a little leery. I was like, are they going to release like a dozen versions of this guy? Maybe I should skip the second version. But I pre-ordered them from GameStop. And after I think probably a couple of months that I had it on pre-order, GameStop called me and said, we oversold our Beskar armor Mandalorian, and we're not going to be able to fulfill our pre-order for you. And I was totally okay with that. I was like, yeah, that's fine. You know what? I've got this one here. This is all I really need. Anyway, also after the series aired, you're aware that the other star of the series was the child that everybody referred to as Baby Yoda, and he became a bit of a phenomenon. And they released a Black Series figure of just Baby Yoda in a little box by himself, and people went kind of nuts for that. I didn't care to get that. Like, sure, I think the Baby Yoda is cute, but it's not a character I felt I needed to go and buy specifically. So I just ignored it. I never ordered it from anywhere. No big deal. But then a little while later, they announced this figure, which was a Target exclusive. And so this is the Mandalorian in his Beskar armor. So now you can see it's much more symmetrical. It's much shinier and silver. It's still not perfect. Like, he's still got some scuffed up brown areas. And that's one of the things I was thinking about, is every season he's going to get a little better armor, and I'm going to end up with 6 or 7 of these guys when all's said and done. So this one I don't think is his fully complete armor. Still a little scruffy, but it's an upgrade from what we saw on this one. So this was the Target exclusive, and I decided I wanted this one because it's got a couple things going for it. So not only is it the Beskar armor, which I missed out on, but this one, unlike the one that was sold previously, has a removable helmet, which we'll do later, so that's kind of cool. And it also came with this accessory here, which is Baby Yoda's like kind of floating crib, and there's a little Baby Yoda in there. So this prevented me from having to go buy the Beskar version and having to buy Baby Yoda separately. Plus, it had an unmasked version, so this I thought was a great set. The only problem was that it is a Target exclusive, and we don't have any Targets here in Canada. So that can be a problem. Now, Target exclusives often end up at other retailers here in Canada. Like, some of the Target exclusives are available at Toys R Us, which we still have in Canada. Some of the Walgreens exclusives, because we don't have Walgreens here either, they end up at GameStop. So it's not like impossible for me to get these figures. But anytime there is a Target or a Walgreens exclusive, I don't know what it's like in the States. Like, if you go to Target and there's pegs and pegs full of these guys, but that is not my experience here in Canada. Just because the Target exclusives do come to Toys R Us, they come in very limited quantities. That's what I've been finding with G.I. Joe classified figures especially. There's a whole bunch of them that are Target exclusives, and it is a nightmare trying to hunt those things down. So I was checking for this guy on our website. He was not showing up at the Toys R Us near me. I have gotten into the habit of checking the next closest Toys R Us, which is several hours away in the neighboring province of New Brunswick. I'm in Nova Scotia. And the reason I check there is because I have a sister that lives in New Brunswick close to that Toys R Us. And so yeah, a couple times I found things available in the New Brunswick store, and I've asked her to go pick them up for me. The only problem with that is sometimes it's months before I actually see her and get the toys from her. So one of the other exclusives that I was searching for online regularly was the Transformer figure Thrust. So one day I was checking the Toys R Us website. Neither of these figures were available in Nova Scotia, but in New Brunswick they had Thrust available, and they also had this version of the Mandalorian. I ordered them both online, was able to pay for them right online, but then you're supposed to go pick them up in store within 48 hours. I wasn't going to make the drive out there, so I just asked my sister if she would mind going pick them up. She did, and she had these figures for several months before I was able to actually go and pick them up from her. So just to give you an idea of how long I've had these figures, though, if you watch my channel regularly, I reviewed that Thrust figure probably several months ago. So first I ordered these online. They sat with my sister in New Brunswick for several months. I finally got them, and now he's been sitting here on my floor waiting to be reviewed for another several months again. So yeah, I've had this guy for a while, so I'm happy to finally get him reviewed. So it's a cool looking figure. It's very similar to this one here. Probably shares a lot of the same parts, but not exact. Like, just at a glance here, let me see, as far as his, like, the plates on his legs, like you can see this guy, this is sculpted different from that guy's. The chest design here, like that logo on his chest there is different from that. The shoulder pads here are different, or the pauldrons. He's got the kind of little skull curved onto that. So, I'm sure there's lots of shared pieces here, but there's also lots of nice little upgrades as well. Probably the most obvious one is the paint. Now we check the back. The capes, they could be the same. They're pretty close, pretty similar. Another thing that this guy has as an upgrade is a backpack. This guy did not have one at the time, but this guy does. So he's got that kind of Boba Fett looking backpack there. So that's another cool thing he's got. He's got that same rifle, that thing that we first saw Boba Fett carrying in the holiday special way back when. So both versions have that. This guy also has the pistol, which can be holstered on his leg, just like the previous figure. But this guy has a bunch of other stuff, and he was a deluxe figure, so he came in a larger, wide box. Here in Canada, a standard Black Series figure like this guy is like $30. It comes in kind of a narrow little box. But then when you get the deluxe figures, they're like $45, and it's a little bit wider. And totally understandable with this guy. I wouldn't say so just for a backpack, but when you come to the whole extra character with the crib and everything there, you know, that I think justifies the cost. He also came with a couple of other little things, which I'm sure I will lose at some point. This thing here, little like detonator, I think. I can't remember exactly what he used it for in the show. And then he's got 4 of these, I think, which are Star Wars credits, you know, like cash in the Star Wars universe. So that's a neat thing to have, but, you know, he's got nowhere to really store those things, so they're just floating around loose. And yeah, now that I finally got this thing reviewed, I can put these things in a little Ziploc bag and tuck them away, and I'll probably never see them again, to be honest with you, but it's a neat little thing to give them. So let's look at Grogu here first, I guess. So the crib is cool. It comes on this little clear stand. You can take it off of there if you want. But the fact that it hovers along in the show, it comes with that clear base. So you kind of get that little hovering look. This Grogu here is not articulated in any way. He's just like a solid piece. The other figure that was available for sale on its own, I believe he was a little bit bigger and he was articulated. I would guess at least his head and arms turned. I don't know if he was more articulated than that. But given that this is such a little small character who can't really do much, I don't care that this guy's not articulated. This is all of the Grogu that I need. Which, by the way, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit as far as the naming goes. Anybody watching this now knows that this character's name is Grogu, but at the time, they still hadn't named him yet. So the box for this figure just says, with the child. That's what they were still calling him then. But an interesting thing to note about the Mandalorian himself is when the first figure came out, this guy here, he was just called the Mandalorian. But after the end of the first season, we learned that his name was actually Djarin, and that's what the packaging for this figure says. It actually refers to him by name rather than just the Mandalorian, which is what he is as a people, not really his name. So the last thing here about Grogu, so I like the paint job on him for such a little guy. Like, they've even got little hairs on his head and everything, which is cute. And then, you know, he's got little rosy cheeks, and inside his ears are colored and everything. So yeah, it's pretty cool. And the detail in there, you know, the fact that they colored like some copper paint and everything in there, that's more than they really needed to do, I think, for this little add-on, but I appreciate all that. And then it comes with a lid that just snaps on place, so you can tuck your Grogu away. And there you go. So Mandalorian, you know, nice sculpting, nice paintwork. I like the paint, that it's, you know, it's shiny, but it's not you know, full on chrome or anything like that. And now we'll look at the other thing. So the helmet comes off, which is cool. I like that we have that option because we know what this character looks like under the mask. But I don't think I will ever display him without his helmet because it is not a very flattering portrait under here. Take this off. And there is their rendition of Pedro Pascal. Now, not to say it's a horrible sculpt. I think part of the problem is, like, the hair looks really greasy and stuck to his head. But in that first season, all we really saw was him take his helmet off at the end after he was really beat up and had been through battle. And his hair was pretty greasy and stuck to his head. And, you know, so it's not necessarily a bad look, but I can't imagine displaying this guy on my shelf like this. He's it's not the most handsome fella here. So, yeah, it's okay. Not great. I imagine we'll probably get a better version of him without the helmet at some point. But anyway, this guy definitely looks a lot better with the helmet on. But I will say, for a figure with a removable helmet, They've gotten really good about making helmets that don't look oversized. Like, back in the old days when I was a kid, if you had G.I. Joes with removable helmets, the helmets often looked really big and ridiculous. I can only imagine if they made Star Wars characters with their helmets coming off, how big and awkward those helmets would look. But this guy, I think his head looks, like the helmet looks great, and the head underneath doesn't look small when you take it off. Like, it's all very well scaled, so really, really well made. I'm impressed with all of that. So anyway, that is Din Djarin, the Mandalorian, and Grogu. So while we're talking about the Mandalorian, we might as well look at this guy next. So this is Q90. This is a character that was introduced during the first season of The Mandalorian. He is a mercenary. There was an episode where the Mandalorian had to team up with a bunch of mercenaries to break into a ship. Most notably, Bill Burr was in that episode. That was the one that introduced him, and he had since come back for a later episode. No such luck for Q90 because he got blown up and supposedly killed in that first episode that he was introduced in. Now, I think his decapitated head appeared again in another episode, but not necessarily indicating that there are any signs of life for this guy. But seeing as it's Star Wars, I'm sure this guy will come back at some point in the future. Characters usually do, especially a droid character. Like, they can absolutely rebuild this guy. And I hope they do, because this is a guy that's pretty cool. And yeah, I think even if he doesn't appear in live action ever again, the Marvel comics definitely give you lots of room to revisit characters like this and expand on their history, everything like that. So I imagine we might see this guy again, even if it's in a prequel story or something told in the comic books, because right now there's not a whole lot to know about Q90. So one of the only things I do know about Q90 is that he is a protocol droid. So the most famous protocol droid is, of course, C-3PO. And we have seen protocol droids used for different purposes in the past. Like, sure, there's the very stiff and formal butlery type, but there's also some pretty mean, aggressive ones. Now, since he's a protocol droid, you think, well, maybe they just took C-3PO's body and stuck this new bug-like head on it. But as far as I can tell, that's not what they did. I don't have a C-3PO, believe it or not. I have probably close to 100 Black Series Star Wars figures, but as I mentioned earlier, I try to only buy cool-looking monsters and robots and stuff. And C-3PO is just one of those characters that I've owned so many times over the years in different formats that I just didn't feel the need to buy the Black Series version. But what I do have is the kind of evil version of C-3PO from the Marvel comic books. This is 000. So this is an evil protocol droid. You see his hands. He's got all these torture devices and blades for fingers. So yeah, he's a very kind of scary protocol droid. And if we look at him side by side, I don't know if these guys share many, if any, pieces. Like, all protocol droids seem to have this little circular piece. I don't know what that is. Maybe a fan or something. And the exposed wires. So you can see by looking at these guys that their torsos are quite different. The circle's smaller on him. He's got this different kind of upper chest piece where he's got these little bits here. Like, 000, I'm sure, uses most of the parts are reused from the C-3PO figure. So if Q90 doesn't share any pieces with him, he probably doesn't share any with 3PO either. And then the waist piece, that's a different shape. And you can see the legs are quite different between these guys. So no similar pieces there. As far as the arms go, he's got some exposed wires and stuff on here. He's got the different kind of shoulder shape and everything. So, these figures are quite different. I don't think they share any of the same parts, even though they're both protocol droids. And then, of course, he's got the very standard face that we're all familiar with for 3PO and other protocol droids we've seen walking around in the background and stuff. But this guy's got this strange bug-like face. Now, that's not unprecedented either, because another figure I have here is I don't know if you call him 4-LOM or 4-LOM, but either way, this is a protocol droid that was first introduced in Empire Strikes Back. He's got a protocol body with the exposed wires, that little circular fan in the middle, and then he's got this crazy fly-like head as well. So, as soon as I saw this character on The Mandalorian, that's who he reminded me of. But when you look at these guys as well, the body shape, the torso, everything's quite different. 4-LOM is much closer to C-3PO in design than this guy. So while at a glance, you might look at Q90 and think, okay, well, they just sculpted a new head and put it on a C-3PO body. That is not the case. It appears to be perhaps an entirely new body. And then he's got this web gear here, which I assume is removable. I don't really see an obvious way to break that apart, but I'm sure you probably could get this off him if you wanted to. But that's kind of cool. It adds a little bit more details of this figure that he's got these extra pouches or something on there. And then for weapons, he has this one gun. Doesn't really look like a Star Wars type of gun to me, but it works for him. And yeah, I think the bug design is really cool. It's in line with 4-LOM. And yeah, I could definitely see myself displaying this guy next to 4-LOM and Zuckuss on my shelf. And he's a pretty cool little toy. So next up, I have the character Wrecker. And this is one of the clone troopers that these guys went off and formed their own team. They were referred to as the Bad Batch because there's something abnormal about each of them that separates them from the standard clones. But, I wouldn't necessarily call them a Bad Batch because each of them seem to have an enhancement that makes them superior to the other clones. But these guys were introduced in the last season of the Clone Wars animated series, and then they got their own spin-off on Disney+. I watched most of it, I think. I don't even remember where I stopped. I probably watched at least the first 5 or 6 episodes. And it was fine. I'll be honest, it's just that style of 3D animation doesn't really appeal to me all that much. I didn't watch the Clone Wars cartoon. I did watch the last season of it, but that was like season 9 or something. So I haven't watched any of the other Clone Wars stuff. And I wanted to be excited about the Bad Batch series, but I just couldn't get that into it. So I don't know. And to be honest, why did I buy these characters then if I didn't get that into the show? I don't know. They're cool designs, and I do love stormtroopers, and these guys are essentially stormtroopers. There was the clone troopers are very similar to the stormtroopers, and these guys are just clone troopers with enhanced armor. So I guess that's why. I kind of figure they're part of my stormtrooper collection, but yeah, otherwise I didn't really love the show, and I don't really intend to buy if they keep making kind of side characters from that show. I probably won't buy them beyond the Bad Batch themselves. And so the Bad Batch was made up of, I think, 4 or 5 characters. I already have 2 of them. This here is Hunter. He was like the leader of the group. And then I've got Crosshair. He was the sniper and later the traitor of the group. And the 4th main member is Tech, who I have pre-ordered, and he's actually in the mail. I'll probably have him in my hands next week. So you'll probably see a review of Tech sometime in the near future. And then the other guy, I have him on pre-order too. I can't even remember what his name is. But eventually I'm going to have the whole Bad Batch squad. And so it'll be cool once I have this whole team complete. I like the look of them together. They all have similar costumes, and that they're gray black with the red highlights, but they're not all the same. So I like that. It's just it makes them a little more interesting to look at, and I don't feel like I'm wasting my money necessarily buying the same figure 5 times over with just say a different head underneath the helmet. So I like that these guys all have their own unique armor designs and their own unique head sculpts underneath. So, for example, all these figures have removable helmets, and like the Mandalorian, Hasbro's done a really good job of making the helmets seem to scale without making the head seem weirdly small or anything. So here's this dude. I've previously reviewed Crosshair and Hunter in another video. But the head sculpts are kind of interesting because these guys never appeared in live action. They only appeared in a CG animated show. However, the Black series, it's kind of based in, kind of more of a realistic toy line. They don't really lean into the cartoon aesthetic. So they kind of had to take these cartoon characters and give them a look as if they were based on, say, a real-life actor, without making them unrecognizable to the fans that wanted cartoon accurate version. And I think they did a really good job. So Wrecker here, so he's got a pretty cool helmet with this painted on design on the front. And he's got my favorite head sculpt underneath. He's got that little smirk. He's got the scars across his face. And I think they do a really good job of all kind of capturing, well, him more than the others. But, these guys are all supposed to be clones of Jango Fett. So they should all have that same face as Jango Fett, as the grown-up Boba Fett. And I see that most in Wrecker. So even though his head is like wider and bald, I definitely see the actor likeness in there. So that's really well done. So Wrecker is my favorite of the Bad Batch so far. He just feels like a good solid figure. Got this removable pack on the back there. Plugs in like so. He's also got his gun. And let's see, a knife. He's got sheathed on his leg. That's a pretty good sized knife. You could do some damage with that thing. I think that was everything. This figure I got quite a while ago, and I guess I forgot to shoot any video of him in package before I threw out the box. But like the Din Djarin figure I showed you earlier, this was a deluxe figure. So whereas these guys were like $30, this guy was like $45, and he came in the wider box. And this is one of those instances where I feel like Hasbro's kind of taken advantage of me a little bit. Like, sure, he's a bigger, more muscular guy. Oh, my focus seems all the way off. Anyway, so he's a bigger, muscular guy, sure. But, for accessories, he's got a backpack, a gun, a small gun, and, a helmet. Like, these guys all have the same thing. Like, Hunter's got 2 guns. I think he has a knife sheathed somewhere as well. Yeah, there's a knife on his arm there. He's got the pack, he's got the helmet. I really don't feel that this guy's, got $15 more worth of plastic with him. Like, maybe they could have justified the cost of that by including the little the girl character, because she'd be only about this big. They could have included her with the package. And if they had done that, then I would have been fine with them charging me, say, $50 or something for him. But like with what he comes with, just the fact that he's a little bit bulkier, I don't think it justifies the cost. Like when you look at Marvel Legends, you've got all kinds of characters ranging from Colossus to Spider-Man. They're different sizes, but Marvel doesn't start charging a premium just because one guy's more muscular than the other one. And I just don't think there's enough in Wrecker's package to justify the cost for a deluxe figure. But he is a cool figure. I like him quite a bit. So, there you go. I don't know. Not much more to say about Wrecker other than he's a cool figure. I enjoy him. So next up, we have the bounty hunter Aurra Sing. Now, this is a character that was introduced, if you could even call it that, but she appeared in The Phantom Menace. And if you blinked, you might have missed her. It's just like in the original Star Wars. They made action figures of characters that appeared on screen for like 3 or 4 seconds in the cantina and stuff. And the same was true when the prequel movies came out. It was during the pod race, and Anakin and Sebulba are whipping around in their pod racers, and you see the ships zip past from all these different angles. So you'd see the sand people up on the mountain kind of taking little pot shots at the pods as they go by, and you'd see the little Jawas yelling "Houdini" as they passed. So there's a scene where Aurra Sing is kind of just standing on a platform overlooking the race, and she's not really featured up like as a close-up or anything. I think it's a wide shot. You see like kind of her whole body standing there, and she just kind of like turns her head to follow the action as the ships zip past, and that's it. That's all she has ever appeared on screen, at least in the live action Star Wars. So if you're like me and you don't really get into the cartoons, there's not much more to know about Aurra Sing. However, my understanding is she was featured pretty prominently in the Clone Wars cartoons. So if you're a fan of this character, I guess that's where you really need to turn to get a little bit more Aurra Sing action. She hasn't been featured much in the Marvel comic books. I think she has been featured a little bit. I don't know if she did more in maybe the Dark Horse comic books, which I did not read. But there's not a whole lot to know about this character. She was mentioned in the Han Solo movie that she was killed by Woody Harrelson's character, Tobias Beckett. So there's not a whole lot of details about that, but I'm sure there's a story to be told there. So maybe we'll see that played out in a comic book or a cartoon series someday. But anyway, so here is the figure. I always thought she was a cool looking character. I gotta be honest, this is pretty weird. I don't remember. I'm sure it's probably screen accurate. I'm sure Hasbro knows what they're doing and they've got all the reference material. But I don't really remember her having this big long antenna poking out of her head. Possibly because the only Aurra Sing figure I've had in my collection for the last 20 years is this little one from the Phantom Menace series, and you can see she does not have that antenna in her head. So this is how I remember the character, more so than the movie, because I've seen the movie a handful of times, but this thing was on display in my collection for several years. So this is what I think of when I think of Aurra Sing. And the new figure is definitely an upgrade. It's got the boots, the bodysuit, the double pistols holstered on her belt, the straps around her arm, little beads in her hair. All that detailing is here, just much more detailed. The face looks really nice with that digital printing. I really like her eyes there. The belt's a lot more detailed. She's got the two guns. I've got one in her hand here, but they can both be holstered. She's got really creepy, long fingers, which is kind of weird. Just a cool figure. I like all the sculpted detail here. I don't know what all these gadgets are for, but it looks neat. Maybe something like nunchucks or a grenade or something. But she's a cool figure. So what you see is what you get, essentially. She does have one other accessory here, which is this big crazy rifle, which can barely fit on screen here, but you see, so it's almost bent the end off there. It's very, very thin and delicate. She can hold that, or you can kind of hang it over her like so. And so that's probably how I'll display her on my shelf. The only problem with that is my shelves are only so tall, and you can see how far up this gun goes, so it might be a little awkward. I might have to take that off of her and put it in my spare parts bin, just because it might not fit on my display. But otherwise, cool figure. I really like the sculpt. Articulation, pretty standard for all the Black Series figures. I don't really have much more to say about her, but not too shabby. And the last figure I have to show you is the Flame Trooper. So this is another variation of the Stormtrooper, and that's really all I know about this guy. He is one of the... there's like a little subset within the Star Wars Black Series for figures based on the video games. And this guy, I think they're called Gamer Greats. And this guy is from the game Jedi Fallen Order. Now, I haven't played any Star Wars games since Rogue Squadron on the N64, back when that first came out. I'm very out of touch when it comes to characters introduced during video games. So, I've never seen this guy in action. But when it comes to Stormtrooper variations, I don't need to see him in action to appreciate the design. I just love the look of Stormtroopers, and I have a nice little army of all kinds of different Stormtrooper variations on my shelf now. And to me, it seems pretty obvious this guy is based on or inspired by the Snowtrooper from the original trilogy, which was my favorite Stormtrooper type. And I've got that guy here just for comparison. So, back in the old days, the original Star Wars line from Kenner, there was the standard Stormtrooper, then there was the Snowtrooper, as well as the AT-AT Driver, which was another white armored Imperial Trooper. They came out from Empire Strikes Back. And then there was the Biker Scout, which is another type of white armored Stormtrooper introduced in Return of the Jedi. Now, I guess you could kind of lump the TIE Fighter pilots who wore black in with the group of Stormtroopers as well. But as a kid, I kind of thought of them as something separately. So as far as I was concerned, there was 4 different types of Stormtroopers when I was a kid. And my brother Doug, who I collected all my toys with kind of concurrently, like we never really got doubles of the same toys. So he collected half of things, I collected the other half. Anyway, Doug had all 3 of the other Stormtrooper types. Technically, I think we actually both had the standard Stormtrooper, but Doug had the AT-AT Driver and Doug had the Biker Scout. So I had the Snowtrooper, and he kind of felt like my character, since Doug had all the other guys. So he was my favorite growing up. I love the look of this guy. I still do. I love that, just that kind of hooded look. Like, I know it's not a good thing that it's kind of reminiscent of the Ku Klux Klan, but I think that's kind of what makes it seem kind of extra evil. Like, the Empire in general, kind of remind me of the Nazis. And, I think that's intentional. So, yeah, it's not a good thing to be, but if you want to make good bad guys, why not associate them with some pretty bad groups? And so, yeah, when I see this guy's hooded face, he just looks like a bad dude. Really cool design. I will say about this Black Series figure when I first got it, this might be more accurate than the vintage figure I had as a kid with the colors. But it kind of threw me off a little bit how much like kind of off-white he has. The one I had as a kid was, this color white like throughout. And that's kind of just what I'm used to. This guy, I don't know if he's just supposed to be dirty from the dirty snow or whatever, but yeah, I wish I loved this figure a little bit more, but I'd rather have one that's solid white, as I find the two colors look a little odd together. Anyway, so this figure here, when I saw this guy, I immediately grabbed him because he's very reminiscent of my favorite Stormtrooper type, and I think they probably share a lot of the same parts. Like, looking at his chest there, like it's painted differently, but you can see this appears to be the same piece. Like little red and black buttons are painted here. They're sculpted there, they're not painted. Same as this panel on the chest in the middle. It's not painted, but it's the same one. The belt, again, the same logo is sculpted there, even though they didn't bother to paint it. So this whole separate waist piece with the skirt on it, that's reused parts. The shoulders are different, or at the very least, maybe one of them has upside down shoulders. As you notice, this guy has these little sculpted little divots on the bottom, where this guy has it on the top. The boots are different, so I think the upper legs are the same, and the knee pads are the same, but you can see this guy has a lot more detail in his boots with all those straps, where this guy has a much simpler boot. The arms, let's see. Oops. So the arms are different. At least the lower arm with that different armor. They both have a backpack that's kind of shaped similarly, but they are different packs as well, and that just plugs in and out of them. And then the helmet. So while there's similarities, they're definitely different. I prefer this look, but this is kind of a cool variation, kind of a cool upgrade. So yeah, I really like the look of this guy. Now he does have a flamethrower with this cord, which will probably break someday. These cords, when they're attached to guns, are always pretty delicate, and it does make it a little hard to get it posed in the guy's hand quite where you want it, because the cord kind of wants to force it to go another way. But you can get it in there, get his finger in the holster, but see, it automatically kind of wants to turn away from his hand, so it's not the greatest. And yeah, where this thing is a little rigid, it does kind of force the way he poses it, but it's all right. One thing that's kind of odd about this guy is he came out right around the same time as the Incinerator Trooper, which was kind of a more classic looking Stormtrooper, also with a flamethrower. So it seemed a little redundant to get two flame troopers right at the same time. And the Incinerator Trooper came with a really cool flame accessory of like a translucent plastic flame that attached to the end of his flamethrower. So I don't know why they didn't include that with this guy. It seems like they already have the piece sculpted. Seems like a real missed opportunity. But regardless, this guy's cool. I'm happy to add him to my collection. Not much more to say. So those were my latest Star Wars Black Series figures. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please make sure to hit the like button and the subscribe button. And please leave me some comments below as well. That's always appreciated. So I will see you soon with another video. Hopefully I'll get at least one more out before Christmas, and I'll maybe try and wrap up all the last bits of odds and ends here that I have. And then I'll be back with a video probably showcasing all the stuff I got for Christmas. And then the last video of the year will hopefully be my my best of list, which I'm always excited. I always have a lot of fun putting that together. So yeah, I'll see you back here for those. Until then, ciao.